My grandfather's watch. It is something that is so dear to me, something that is so close to me, something that is an integral part of my life that I keep in my suit pocket at every given moment. And in fact, it's a way that I remember who he was, his life, his inhibitions, his hopes for the future, and the fact that he survived near-death experiences, being persecuted and traveling from Eastern Europe as a kid. This is the story of not just my grandfather's watch, but of my grandfather. Now I want us to dwell on this point. You probably have a grandfather. You probably have someone who is so close to you, whether you call him grandpa or gramps. He's someone who you can just go give a hug, someone that you can care about, who loves you, who just wants the best for you. And he's someone that I believe is dear to you. And this is the story of how my grandfather came from Eastern Europe. So it's not actually my grandfather. It would be my great-grandfather. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. And it is a very sad reality to know that I didn't meet him. And I've spoken before about a man called Papa. Now, Papa is my great-grandfather. And what happened was, as a young kid, he was in Russia, in Eastern Europe. And unfortunately, being a Jewish man, he was being persecuted. And so life became incredibly difficult for them. They were denied basic freedoms, like easily buying food, being allowed to practice as dentists, doctors, and lawyers, as professionals. And so they were reduced to subhuman individuals, ousted and shunned from society, and their culture had been banned. Their culture had been limited to prevent the Jewish people from spreading out and proliferating. And so, as a young boy, my great-grandfather named Papa came on a barge, on a literal barge, to the country where I now am, which is Southern Africa. And he didn't have an easy life. As a young man it wasn't actually Russia, I apologize. As a young man in Lithuania, he didn't have any skills. He didn't know how to speak English. And so the only thing that he could do was go through a community organization to upskill himself and learn about engineering. And he learned and he learned and he learned and he studied. And eventually he managed to pass with a qualification. Now Papa wasn't just a normal man. And I've said before that Papa wasn't just, as I said, a normal man. He was a genius. And there's a famous story that my family loved to talk about. And it's about Papa. One time he went to Italy and he saw a riveting machine because from his engineering background, he started his own factory. I'll get to that now. And when he was in Italy, he saw this fancy machine and he wondered, how much does it cost? But it was exorbitant, the figure. Thousands of whatever the currency in Italy was. I've said before that he could not afford it. But because he was a genius, by the time he came back from his trip and from his travels, he was able to recreate that machine from head to toe. And he made his own riveting machine without even buying it. He went there on holiday, saw the machine, understood how it worked, and he came home and made it. Papa has tens of patents to his name. Maybe even has 100 patents. What happens is in every single, again, we're going to talk about, this is in the 90s, 1990, when Papa was running his hardware business. And so every single warehouse had a certain kind of roof. I don't know why someone's hooting, I apologize. Every single warehouse had a certain kind of roof that would curve over, made out of sheet metal. And Papa developed the patent to not just create a flat sheet of metal, but to create a sheet of metal that looked like this and curved over to create an awning, as they call. And every single warehouse had Papa's sheet metal, which meant that he earned royalties. Now you got to understand, Papa was a very, very poor man. He came to South Africa with nothing, on a barge. I don't even think he came with his parents. He may have come alone. And we call him Papa. His real name was Morris. Now, remember, as a kid, in fact, I don't even remember seeing Morris. I never had a chance to see him in person as an elderly, well not elderly, but see him in person, see him in real life. And if you get to meet your great-grandfather, well then you got to know that you are a very lucky person. Because I never got to meet him, only my great-grandmother. I never ever got to meet him. But I know from the stories that I've heard that he was an unbelievable and he was a remarkable man. So let's get back to how he was incredibly poor and he built his hardware business. You can see how he was a genius. He built this amazing hardware business from scratch. What he would do, Papa was such a genius, I've said before, that he would go to sleep dreaming about engineering problems. And he would wake up in the middle of the night in a frantic sweat. And he would quickly take out his notebook and he would write down engineering ideas. Now my great-grandmother was telling me that Papa would have a success rate of, let's say, 1 in 5. He would wake up in the middle of the night drawing some sort of gimmick, some sort of machine that would make a rivet, make a screw, some way that you could use bottle tops to make sheet metal, some engineering trick or an engineering device, an invention. He was an inventor beyond anything. A businessman, but an inventor. And 1 in every 5 of those inventions worked. And not only that, but he patented it. And Papa built himself up from a nothing. From a man who had lost his dignity, who had lost his humanity, who came on a boat, on a barge, as a young boy, most likely without his parents. And he built himself up. And he managed to support his family, having 3 beautiful daughters and a son. And I often think back, when I wear his watch and keep it in my suit pocket, about how Morris had such a hard life, and how he suffered, so that I today am able to enjoy my life in a beautiful place, in a beautiful house with a beautiful family. And it was all because of decisions that he made. If he decided to stay in Eastern Europe, who knows if he would have been killed or not. Who knows if he would have then met my great-grandmother and would have had those 3 beautiful daughters and a son, who then would have built our family up to the point where I was born. If Morris didn't decide to take action and take the risk, go on the barge, perhaps lose his parents, create patents, wake up in the middle of the night, invent, none of this would be happening today. And I wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't be hearing his story. I was watching this watch reviewer 2 years ago. I used to be into watches and learning. And he said, watches, just like many other luxury items, are special. They aren't the same as just a hamburger or a bit of cold drink. They aren't the same as that. Because a luxury watch isn't just an Omega, isn't just a Rolex, isn't just grandfather's watch. The Papa or Morris's watch isn't just a Benedict, whatever this watch is. This watch is him. The Rolex becomes your grandfather. The Omega becomes your grandmother. And the Breitling becomes your brother. The watches become those people. A way of us in present day as living individuals to connect with those members of the past. And so I want to leave you with one lesson now that you've heard Morris's story. And it's about gratitude. Morris had to leave his family, leave his home, leave his culture, leave his religion, leave everything behind so that he could start a new life. What gratitude do you have for what your ancestors have done? For what the people have come before you have done? Do you have any idea what sacrifices they did? Any idea how hard they had to toil? Any idea if they lost their parents or if they were persecuted? You need to find that out. And that's what I want to leave you with today. Find out where you come from, what sacrifices they made, what did they do, and hopefully that would inspire you to do something extraordinary. Because this is the story of my grandfather's watch. May he rest in peace.